Have you ever walked through a city, maybe New Orleans or Istanbul, or even just a weird part of downtown Chicago, and felt like the buildings were literally arguing with each other?
Oh, yeah, totally.
You've got a French balcony here, a Spanish courtyard there, maybe a sleek modern glass skyscraper looming over a centuries-old church. It feels chaotic, like almost random.
It does feel random, but if you're a geographer, it's really not chaos. It's actually a manuscript.
A manuscript.
Exactly. Think of the world as a document that has been written over, erased, and then written over again by different people, centuries apart. If you know how to read the handwriting, you can see the invisible rules that shape, everything from why we eat what we eat to why wars start to why a bank in the middle of Ohio looks like a Greek temple.
That is the hook right there.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we aren't just memorizing maps, we are decoding that invisible world.
Yes, we are.
Specifically, we are tackling AP Human Geography Unit 3, which is Cultural Patterns and Processes.
And this is a heavy hitter for you listening. We are looking at roughly 12 to 17% of the entire AP exam.
It's a huge chunk.
Very high stakes. But here is the mission for this deep dive, and I want to be really clear about this because most students get stuck memorizing vocabulary cards.
Right, they just memorize turn.
Yeah, they know what a hearth is or what diffusion means, but that's not enough to score a 5.
Oh.
We need to move to analysis. We need to understand the why and the so what.
We want the underlying mechanics, not just the dictionary definitions. We want to know why culture looks the way it does and what happens when it moves across the map.
Precisely. So to keep us organized, we've structured this into 3 clear layers. First, the foundations and the invisible structure of culture.
Okay.
Second, the mechanics of how culture actually moves across the planet. And third, the so what the outcomes when cultures collide, blend, or clash.
I really like that roadmap. Let's start with the what. When I hear culture, and I think most people are the same here, I think food, festivals, maybe what people are wearing.
The visible stuff.
Exactly, the visible stuff.
And that is exactly where the trap lies. That is the amateur view. Geographers use the iceberg model for a reason. If you're on a ship, the part of the iceberg you can see, the tip above the water, that represents artifacts.
The physical stuff.
Yeah.
Tools, clothing, architecture. The stuff you can just take a picture of.
Right. But the part that sinks the ship, the massive 90% below the waterline, that's the invisible stuff. We call these mentefacts and sociofacts.
Let's break those down because they sound like sci-fi terms to me.
Mentefacts.
Think mental.
These are the beliefs, values, and norms. Religious ideas, attitudes toward individualism versus collectivism. Then you have sociofacts, which are the social structures, how we organize our families, our tribes, our governments.
Right.
The crucial thing to understand for the exam is that you cannot explain the tip of the iceberg if you don't understand what's holding it up from underneath.
Give me a concrete example of this link. How does an invisible mentefact change what I actually see on the street?
Okay, take the concept of time. It seems universal, but it's really not. In many Western cultures, the dominant mentefact is that time is a limited commodity. We say time is money.
Right. We spend time, we waste time, we save time. It's treated like a bank account.
Exactly. Now look at the behavior. The visible tip of the iceberg. People walk fast. Meetings start exactly on the dot. If you're late, it's considered rude or unprofessional. But go to a culture where time is viewed as a fluid medium for relationship building. That is a completely different mentefact.
Then the behavior changes entirely. Being late doesn't really exist in the same way because the meeting doesn't actually start until everyone has had tea and asked about your grandmother.
Precisely. Now here is where it gets tricky for the exam, and frankly for life in general. If you look at that second culture and say, wow, these people are lazy and disorganized, you are engaging in ethnocentrism.
Judging them by my rules, not theirs.
And usually implying your rules are better, like eating with your hands is gross because we use forks. That's ethnocentrism. The counter skill, and this is critical for you to apply on the AP test, is cultural relativism.
Which is judging a culture by its own standards.
Right. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with it morally. It's not about saying everything is okay. It means you are just trying to understand the context. If you can't switch to a relativistic lens, you can't analyze cross-cultural conflict. You'll just see right and wrong instead of system A colliding with system B.
But that collision leaves a mark, physically, on the ground. We talk about the cultural landscape.
The human mark on the land. But remember your opening image, the buildings arguing with each other. That is a concept called sequent occupancy.
I love this term. It sounds like a legal drama, but it's actually just about history layers.
It's the idea that successive societies leave their imprint on a place, one right on top of the other. The classic example, the one you really need to know, is the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul.
Talk us through that timeline, because it's wild.
Okay, so 6th century, the Byzantine Empire builds it. It's an Eastern Orthodox Christian cathedral. Huge dome, very distinct style. Fast forward to 1453. The Ottomans conquer the city.
And they don't tear it down.
No, they modify it. They add minarets, those tall, slender towers, and they cover the Christian mosaics with Islamic calligraphy. It becomes a mosque.
So now the building is physically a hybrid of two empires.
Then, in the 20th century, secular Turkey turns it into a museum to neutralize the religious tension. And very recently, it was converted back into a functioning mosque. If you look at that building, you aren't just seeing architecture. You are seeing a physical record of political conquest and religious shifting.
It's a timeline built in stone, and this ties into placemaking, right? We design spaces to tell people who we are.
Exactly. When an ethnic group moves into a neighborhood and changes the signage, paints the storefront specific colors, or builds arches over the street, they are creating a sense of place. They are turning a generic location into a home that reflects their identity.
But identity is a double-edged sword. It brings people together, but it also tears them apart.
The physics of culture. We call these centripetal and centrifugal forces.
Centripetal moving toward the center. These are the binders.
Glue. Hinduism in India is a massive centripetal force. It binds the majority of the population together. The Han ethnicity in China, over 90% of the population, creates immense cultural cohesion, or simply a shared language.
But then you have the centrifugal forces, the wedges that drive people apart.
And these are often the exact same things, just flipped. Religion can be glue, but look at the Sunni-Shia conflict within Islam. That is a centrifugal force that fractures states. Or language. Think about the English-only movements in the U.S. creating friction with Spanish speakers.
Or tragically, ethnicity in Rwanda. The Hutu and Tutsi distinction became the ultimate centrifugal force.
Exactly. So for you listening, when you see a map or a case study on the exam, ask yourself, is this culture acting like glue, or is it acting like a wedge?
That's a great pivot point. We know what culture is. It's the iceberg. It's the landscape. It's the glue. But culture doesn't stay put. It moves.
Let's talk about segment 2, diffusion, the mechanics of the spread.
Everything starts somewhere. We call that origin point the cultural hearth. Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley, the Indus Valley, these are the kitchens where the original recipes were cooked up.
But the food has to get out of the kitchen.
Right. And broadly, there are two ways that happens: relocation and expansion.
I always visualize this simply. In relocation diffusion, the people act like suitcases.
That's the perfect analogy. The people physically move. Migration is the vehicle. If you look at why Portuguese is spoken in Brazil or Spanish in Mexico, it's not because the idea of the language floated across the ocean on the wind. It's because people from Spain and Portugal got on boats, crossed the Atlantic, and unpacked their culture in a new place.
Okay, so relocation equals people move. Expansion is the spooky one. The people stay put, but the trait spreads, like a virus, or a snowball rolling downhill. And there are 3 distinct flavors of expansion diffusion you need to spot. The first is contagious diffusion.
This is the viral video.
Exactly. It ignores hierarchy. It ignores power. It just spreads from person to person like the flu, a slang word, a meme, or historically, a new farming technique spreading from neighbor to neighbor. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, if you're near the source, you catch it.
Contrast that with hierarchical diffusion. This is the snob.
Huh. In a way, it's top-down. It moves from nodes of power or influence to smaller places. Think high fashion. A trend starts on a runway in Paris or Milan. Then it hits New York and Tokyo. Then, maybe a year later, a version of it hits the local mall in a small town.
Or tech gadgets. The rich early adopters get the new smartphone first, then it trickles down.
Exactly. It jumps from big city to big city before filling in the gaps. Now, the third one is the trickiest, stimulus diffusion.
This one always trips people up.
This is where the idea spreads, but the specific trait fails. It hits a cultural barrier and has to morph to survive.
McDonald's in India is the champion of this example.
It really is the textbook definition. The idea, fast, standardized burgers spreads to India. But there's a massive cultural barrier. The cow is sacred in Hinduism. You cannot sell beef. If it were simple contagious diffusion, McDonald's would have just failed.
Instead, the idea adapted.
Right. You get the chicken Maharaja Mac or the McSpicy Paneer. The stimulus, the fast food burger concept survived, but the trait, the beef patty, was rejected and modified.
We can't talk about how these things spread without talking about power, though. Historically, this wasn't always peaceful sharing.
No. We have to talk about imperialism and colonialism. They are the engines of relocation diffusion in the last 500 years. Imperialism is the ideology, the policy of extending power. Colonialism is the action on the ground, physically settling and dominating.
That's why we have Christianity in sub-Saharan Africa. That's why English is a global lingua franca.
Correct. Let's define that term. A lingua franca is just a common language used for business between two people who don't speak the same native tongue. Today, it's English. If a pilot from Brazil lands in Tokyo, they speak English to the tower. Historically, in East Africa, it was Swahili. In the Indian Ocean Trade Network, it was Arabic. Trade and conquest force people to find a common code.
And sometimes that code creates something brand new. Creolization.
This is fascinating. It starts as a pidgin, a simplified mix just to get by, but over time it becomes a fully developed language with its own grammar and native speakers. Haitian Creole is a blend of French and West African languages. Gula in the U.S. South, Afrikaans in South Africa. These aren't just bad versions of European languages, they are new, complex systems born from intense contact.
But today, we don't need a boat to spread culture. We have the internet.
We call this time-space convergence. The world is shrinking, distance decay. The rule that says further away means less interaction is getting much weaker. I can drop a K-pop video in Seoul and a kid in Texas watches it 10 seconds later.
Which leads to attention. We are seeing cultural convergence.
We are all wearing jeans, drinking Starbucks, and scrolling the same social media. The world is becoming homogenized.
But Newton's laws apply here too.
Mm.
For every action, there is reaction. Cultural divergence.
Yes. People push back. They feel their identity slipping away, so they isolate. The Amish in the United States are the textbook case. They live right next to modern highways and power lines, but they deliberately reject certain technologies to maintain a distinct cultural boundary.
It's a tug of war. Blending in versus standing out.
And on the exam, you need to spot that tension. Is this community opening the gates convergence or building a wall divergence?
All right, let's land the plane with segment 3, the outcomes. The so what. Let's look at how we classify all the big ones, language and religion, and then what happens when they actually mix on the ground.
Geographers love taxonomy. With language, think of a tree. It helps to visualize it. The trunk is the family. The biggest trunk for English is Indo-European.
Then you have the branches.
Right. We branch off into Germanic. German, English, Dutch are hanging out there. Meanwhile, Spanish and French are over on the Romance branch.
And the leaves are the specific languages and dialects.
Exactly. And this explains the why. Why is the word for table mesa in Spanish and mensa in Latin simile roots but tisch in German? Because they are on different branches of the history tree. If you know the tree, you can map the migration of the people who spoke the language.
Now, what about religion? The big divide here is universalizing versus ethnic religions.
Think of it like a business model versus a family inheritance.
Yeah.
Universalizing religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Sikhism, they want customers, they seek converts, they spread widely, usually through expansion diffusion.
And ethnic religions.
You are generally born into them. Hinduism and Judaism are the key ones here. They don't send out missionaries to knock on doors. Because of that, they tend to stay regionally clustered, a dense blob on the map, unless the people migrate physically. That's relocation diffusion again.
So if I see a map with dots scattered all over every continent, it's probably Christianity or Islam.
Mm-hmm.
If I see a dense concentration in one single spot, it's likely Hinduism.
That is a very safe bet. And identifying that pattern is often a multiple choice question on the exam.
Let's wrap with the 4 big terms for what happens when people actually meet. These get confused constantly. Acculturation, assimilation, syncretism, and multiculturalism.
Okay, lightning round. Acculturation is the dual identity. You move to a new country, you learn the language for work, you wear the clothes in public, but at home you speak your native tongue and eat your traditional food. You adopt the dominant traits just enough to function, but you keep your core.
Okay, assimilation is the sponge.
Complete absorption. The minority culture disappears into the dominant one. This can be voluntary, like German immigrants in the U.S. changing their names during the World Wars to avoid stigma. But it can also be forced.
Like the Native American boarding schools.
A tragic, crucial example. The motto was literally, kill the Indian, save the man. It was a deliberate, state-sponsored attempt to erase a culture through forced assimilation. The goal was to make the minority culture vanish completely.
Then we have syncretism. The blender.
We talked about this with the Maharaja Mac, but in religion, it's huge. It's blending traits to make a third new thing. The Day of the Dead is a perfect example. It takes indigenous Aztec ancestry worship and blends it with Catholic All Saints' Day. It's not one or the other, it's both, creating something totally unique. Sikhism is another blending elements of Hinduism and Islam.
And finally, multiculturalism. The salad bowl.
Coexistence.
Yeah.
Different cultures live side by side, and nobody dissolves.
How do I see the salad bowl on the street?
Look at the signs. If you walk down a street and see a Vietnamese pho shop right next to a Mexican bakery, and the street signs are in 2 languages, and there's a mosque down the block from a church, that is the visual landscape of multiculturalism. Distinct identities, shared space.
We've covered a massive amount of ground, from the invisible iceberg to the viral spread of memes to the physical layering of mosques and churches.
It's a huge unit, but if you take one thing away, it's this. Connect the visible to the invisible. Don't just look at a map and see borders. Ask, how did this language get here? Was it a boat relocation or a broadcast expansion? Is this building trying to unify the people centripetal, or is it a sign of conquest?
And here's a challenge for you listening right now. Next time you are walking through your town, look up. Look at the restaurant names. Look at the architecture. Is your town a salad bowl? Is it a result of colonial history? Or is it a victim of global homogenization where everything just looks like the exact same strip mall?
The clues are definitely there. You just have to read the landscape.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. Good luck with your studies.
Good luck. Keep questioning.